welcome to the Speaking Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Daisy Farrell, and I'm a medium, healer, teacher, and artist based in the Hudson Valley, New York, and I am so glad that you are here with me today. All right, you guys, so it's been a little bit since I've been able to record an episode, especially one solo like this, so I'm really happy to be able to do this today. And I have a really important topic to discuss. And I mean, that was really the intention of this podcast in the first place. It was to really be, a huge variety of topics all around the umbrella of mediumship, spirituality, and so forth. But especially for me to bring up topics that I feel like are not discussed maybe enough, or things that come up a lot with my clients or in my own experience that I just think are important to share with my audience. So this is definitely a really, really important one, and one that has come up since day one. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in here and look at all the components. So without further ado, I am going to dive right in here. Connecting to your own loved ones. What is the deal? One of the main points that I want to really emphasize here is the fact that your loved ones are the most connected to you, and you singly, right? If a medium or a psychic tells you that they are more connected to your loved ones, please keep your money and run. Because that's BS, honestly. Because think about this. They're your loved ones. They are part of your life. They are part of your soul. And they are so deeply connected with you, and in a way that I don't think any of us really even fully understand, right? So I just think that sometimes people maybe don't realize that. And I think that can also be unfortunately due to not so great mediumship either. And here's one thing I will say is that, yes, I do think that a mediumship reading can obviously give us this type of communication with our loved ones that may be hard to access as an individual, right? It can also be really validating as an external thing and an external experience. And it can just offer a different perspective and a different type of experience in connecting to your loved one. And I totally get it, and I think it can be life-changing, healing, and amazing for all of those reasons. However, it is not at all necessary in order for you to have a strong and fulfilling connection with your own loved ones. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come to me and say, hey, can you tell so-and-so happy birthday or something like that, right? And I'm telling you, and so I always say to them, I'm like, well, they just heard you, right? Because they do. They always hear you. They are always around. They are always involved. And even if you don't say things out loud, even if you think certain things to them in your mind, they will receive it. It's actually very, very simple in that way. A few other things that I want to say about this is the fact that mediumship is natural. And it's natural for all of us. Why? Because we are all a soul. We are souls inside a human body, right? But our loved ones are also a soul. So the act of mediumship really is just connecting soul to soul. Therefore, everybody has access to that experience. One of the ways that I like to look at mediumship and psychic ability is seeing it the same way as you could view musical ability, artistic ability, right? We all have the ability to do it if we choose to, right? And we can also train and get better and practice and work on it. And then there's some people that they don't need to work as hard at it and they are just able to do it with a lot more ease. There's a huge range, right? But we all have access to it. I really see intuition as just part of being a human being, right? It's just one of our senses. It's just a birthright. So I think it's important to put that out there, that this is accessible to all people, right? It may express itself differently for different people, which also is okay. And that's another thing that I'm going to look into and kind of discuss more here, is the fact that it doesn't have to look like other people's experience. It can be unique to you, and it should be. Something that actually came up for me the other day when I was talking with a friend of mine is this concept around mediumship being a gift, right? And I really don't like that. It bothers me. And it bothers me for a few reasons. But first off, I feel like saying that it's a gift it's a sensationalism kind of thing. And it makes it as if a medium is better than other people or is on this type of pedestal or is, doing some unbelievable act of God, is so beyond a normal human being, which just isn't true. It's natural, and mediums are just people, right? They're not supernatural. They're not better than anyone else. And I really like to, kind of break down that myth as much as I possibly can. What came up in that conversation that I really love is this idea that mediumship isn't the gift, right? The gift is just the person. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's a really successful medium that's on TV or whatever. To me, the fact that they are able to connect as a medium isn't a gift. It's a natural thing. But they may be gifted in being entertaining, in conversing with other people, learning how to or knowing innately how to connect with other people and be socially appealing, right? That's where they may be gifted. So let me know if you agree with this or just any thoughts that you have. But that's really what I believe there. It's not that they were magically gifted this ability, but I think it's the other personality traits or who they are that allow them to be proficient at it in a way that allows them to be successful, just like in any other skill or any other thing in life. And that also goes along with talking about mediumship may be easier for certain people and come more naturally for some people because of just how they are built as a person, just because of the way their mind works. And I do think that that's part of it. But again, the actual connection of mediumship is not a factor there. So let me know if you get what I'm saying, because I do think this is a fascinating topic as well. And I could probably honestly do a whole episode on just this alone, but I want to keep going here. So I'm going to go into one other thing. The other thing I hear all the time that also drives me crazy is when you hear people say that we need to raise our vibration in order for spirit to technically lower their vibration and meet us in the middle, which is why they say, oh, this is where the word medium comes from. Now, I couldn't disagree with this more for a few reasons. One being that, first off, we don't have to raise our vibration to communicate with anything. We just don't. Sure, the idea of raising one's vibration is great, and I think I understand wanting to do that for honestly other reasons. It's not necessarily mediumship, but sure, okay, doing things that they would say that raise your vibration is what? Like do things that make you happy. Get rid of people that make you unhappy. Take care of yourself. Things like that. That in general, that's just going to make honestly anything easier in your life, first off. But to me, it's not necessarily that you're raising your vibration to this point that you can, reach a higher space. Because also to me, the spirit world is not above us. And I think that's why I don't like this concept. They're not somewhere out of reach, high above the sky where we need to float up and meet them there. I just don't see it that way at all. I truly believe that the spirit world exists right on top of us. And it's not something that we have to do anything crazy to access and be a part of, because we're already there. I think a good example that points against this idea is where my mentor, He has known many old spiritualists that were incredible mediums back in England a while back, and several of them were big drinkers, big smokers, right? Didn't really meditate, didn't really lead a quote unquote spiritual life and way of living or treating people, but they were incredible mediums. Right. So to me, that right there just goes to show it. In like, especially in the new age terms of a high vibe person, that's definitely not in that category, right? Of heavy smoking, alcoholic person, right? That's rude to everyone. That would not fall in the idea of that high vibe, concept. Yet it worked. So I think that's a great example for people to realize you don't have to be doing all these crazy things in order to access the spirit world and for it to be effective. So those are just a few things that I wanted to at least bring up and discuss a little bit, because I do think that they're important points to bring up and set the tone for kind of where I'm going here. Because these are just my beliefs, right? And not everybody's going to agree with them, which is completely fine. I think all of this stuff is super subjective and individual, but I wanted to bring those up. And now I'm going to go into things that I find people struggle with the most when it comes to connecting to their own loved ones. I think probably the number one thing that people struggle with the most is, how do I not know that this is my imagination? And it's totally understandable, especially with this topic, because it's our own loved ones. So it's even harder, in a sense, to remove our own thinking and to trust exactly what we're seeing. Because, for example, let's say we start picturing our loved one in spirit in great detail, and we start imagining a really happy memory with them that we have. We could very easily kind of brush that off as, well, I was just thinking of them and I was just having a memory that I already have within my brain really stored there, right? Now, while that's entirely possible, one of the things that I like teaching people is a few things here. It's realizing that these connections are incredibly subtle, first off, and the more we can practice what these little subtleties feel like, the better you're going to get at recognizing when this energy connecting with you is your loved one and not your imagination. I also think it's important to realize that we don't have to worry so much about it. I think sometimes we get so caught up in needing something to be very specific or needing an experience to be, undoubtedly clear that it's them. But I just think that we could kind of give ourselves a break here. And why can't we just allow ourselves to receive this thought that we're having about our loved one and that it feels good? And maybe we can't verify for sure if it's them or not, but why don't we just receive it and enjoy it and not worry about it so much? Which really leads me into another part of this list that I was going to go over, which is allowing this experience and process to be fun. Allow it to be fun. Allow it to be an adventure, experimental, instead of something out of forcing energy. When we get frustrated or we're just desperate to connect, or we are, forcing this type of connection, I guarantee you it is never going to feel good. It's going to be frustrating, and you're probably not going to get the results that you're hoping for. We got to realize that this unseen world is clearly very complex and so beyond anything that we could ever wrap our head around or understand. Gotta give our loved ones some slack in that regard, right? We don't know how all of this works for them, okay? So I try to be really fair when it comes to connecting to my loved ones, in the sense that, hey, they're having their process, I'm having mine. And I think the less that I can force, the better. And the more that I allow it to naturally unfold and for inspiration to naturally lead me towards how I'm wanting to connect with them, the better. Another side note that kind of piggybacks on this idea is if you're in a state of really intense grief right now, it may be a little more challenging to have these experiences. Not always. I think, again, this is very, very individual, but it can be a factor. And I think because sometimes when we're in such immense grief, it's hard to see anything clearly. And that really goes for literally everything, not just connecting mediumistically. It just makes life hard, right? Grief is going to make everything have this filter and have this extra layer of heaviness along with it. So I would, as much as, when we're in that state, I think we can have these waves of desperately missing our loved one and wanting to connect with them. We also have to realize that it doesn't mean that they're not there. And it doesn't mean that they're not hearing us and listening to our request, right? But we also need to experience that process, as painful as it can be. It's something that's natural. It's something that's part of loss. And like I said, it's not pleasant. But I've also found that and really this is just from my own experience, as I've gone through really difficult periods of grief, I think my connection to my loved ones has definitely gotten easier as time goes on, as that grief is less intense for me. Because I also look at it this way. I feel like grief, clearly, right? That's us really processing the idea that our loved one is no longer in their human form with us. And now they are in spirit. And so our relationship is still very much there, but it's different. And it's in a different format that we are not used to. So it's going to take time, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's normal. It's normal to have a process with this. And I really want people to, I think, to not be so hard on themselves about it, right? And I know I've already mentioned it a couple times, but this is unique and it should be. Let it be unique. So I would really recommend to stop comparing other people's experience when it comes to connecting to their loved ones. We all operate differently. We all receive information through our intuition in our own way. And that's how it should be. And it's no different when it comes to connecting to our loved ones. So one of the things that I would really emphasize is that you should lean into the methods that you enjoy, not the methods that haven't worked for you in the past. For example, let's say your entire life you've never really been a big dreamer. Maybe you just don't remember your dreams that well, or they're not very vivid, and it's just always been that way no matter what you do. So then I would not suddenly expect myself to have a crazy visitation dream. It can happen, but I would just say don't be disappointed if that's not something that happens for you and maybe happens for someone else. I say go with what feels natural for you. And there's really no limit to what that could be. So if you're somebody that loves to write, you could try automatic writing with your loved one. If you're somebody that loves music, or maybe you have a really strong music connection to your loved one, you could simply put on a song that makes you feel connected to your loved one and just sit in silence with that music playing with the intention of connecting to their energy. Things like this, you can get creative with it. And I would also say to broaden what you are expecting. And this is what I mean by that. If you are to choose a sign, which I'm also going to talk about a little more, let's say you choose a feather, for example, okay? And you're like, all right, give me a feather to let me know that you're around. Okay. Then let's say you get mail, and then you get a letter and it has a stamp with a feather on it. That counts, right? But I think sometimes we are we're kind of stubborn, right? Which really, that's our human. But we get stubborn and we're like, no, I want a real feather and I want it to fall on my head at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, right? You get what I mean? So that's great to want something that specific. And I'm not saying don't ask for something more specific, which I'm also going to go into. But I would just say be more open-minded, and also don't judge your experience. There's no competition. There's no, right? Like, allow it to just kind of like breathe, like let go of any kind of forcing, which I already said, but you don't beat yourself up if you're having a hard time with this, because it's okay and it's totally normal. First off, the more compassionate I think we can be towards ourselves in this process, the better as well. But just be more open-minded with the form that it shows itself to you, because it may not be literal all the time. Okay, so for the last part here, I'm going to just give a few of my tips on what you could do to connect with your loved ones in hopefully a better or clearer way. Like I mentioned before, signs are fabulous. They're a wonderful tool to use. I use them all the time. And they're really fun, too. I think they're really fun. So one thing that I would say is I would tell your loved one what sign you want. Don't wait for them to give you one all the time. Sometimes they do. It totally does happen. But I think it's even better when you just say it. I want this. And this is great for a few reasons. First off, it's opening up active dialogue between you and your loved one, which is always accessible to us, but we just forget. And it's a great way to also open you up to seeing how this dialogue can really work and that they really respond to our requests. That's great. And then I would also say that when you pick a sign, make it something really specific. So don't just say, I want a cardinal. I mean, sure, if you want to do that, you can. But I say pick something unusual. Pick something that's a little more challenging or surprising. For example, let's say, hey, I want you to send me a blue bear. Okay, just for an example, right? Just to make it a little more unique. This can be really fun because especially when you pick something more odd like that and then you see it, it blows your mind, right? So I just really recommend trying that. And you can make it as simple as this. You just sit in meditation with your loved one, which I'm also going to talk about, and say, hey, from now on, I really want you to send me whatever you want to choose, right? And I will be looking for it. And then when you encounter this sign, which you will, I want you to outwardly acknowledge it and say, I see it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can you do it again? Because again, this is validating and building on that dialogue that I was talking about. And to take it even further, I would also record these experiences. That's something that I do way obsessively, probably a little too much, but I will photograph things. I will take screenshots of things. I will make voice memos. I have countless notes, but I track all of these experiences with great detail, and I will date them. I will give them the time. I will do all of those things. I literally have a specific album on my phone for signs that Spirit gives me. And this is another really simple tool that I often recommend to all of my students because I have really found that recording things that happen and things that you experience within Spirit and within building your intuition, it's so incredibly helpful. And then you get to look back and realize certain patterns, certain connections to things that have happened that you would never have realized otherwise. So it's a really, really helpful tool for so many reasons. Okay, so another thing that you can do, and I would say even if you're maybe not the best at meditating or you don't enjoy meditating, you don't have to do this. But if you're somebody that doesn't mind maybe meditating even 5 minutes, right? It does not have to be super extensive. I really recommend picking a meeting place with your loved one. And what I mean by this is really literal and very simple. I just want you to go in your memory and think of a place that you frequented with this particular loved one that you just love so, so much. It could be your favorite place in the world or one of your favorite places, but it's a place that is really vivid in your memory and something that's super easy for you to go to. I think this is a great tool because it essentially gets rid of all the extra steps that I think our human can make us put on that we don't really need in order to, quote unquote, get there, right? Or get to our loved one. If we've already established the place that we're going, boom, done, right? You just make that really clear and say, hey, to your loved one, when I go to this place, this is where I'm going to connect with you and to catch up, to ask you questions, or just feel your presence. And I'm going to offer a quick little visualization at the end of this where we can practice that. And then finally, the last tool that I'm going to suggest is picking a trigger. And this is what I mean by that. I kind of touched on it before, but picking a song, okay? So literally just picking a particular song. And so you tell your loved one, hey, when I put my headphones on and I play this song, that's me asking to connect with you. And that is my time to be with you and within your presence. Done. You could also pick an object. I know that that's not available to everyone. So just know that there's, like I said, there's endless possibilities here. But let's say you have maybe a shirt of your loved one or an object of theirs that was really, really dear to them. You could also say, hey, when I sit intentionally and hold this item, that is me telling you, okay, I'm ready to feel your presence and connect with you. These are all really great ways to experiment with this. And I really just recommend playing around with it. See what feels good to you. Like I had already said before, it's what feels good to you. A big part of this too is not judging the way that you experience these things. Because if you are doing these intentional sittings, like I was mentioning, with maybe a song or your loved one's item, and you're just saying, hey, I want to feel your presence. And let's say you don't necessarily see anything in your mind's eye, you don't maybe hear anything, maybe you don't feel anything too crazy, but you start to feel a really beautiful sensation around you. Or you get this presence of love overcoming you. That's successful in my mind, right? It doesn't have to be this earth-shattering experience. I think if anything, that's more, again, our human really wanting that validation. The other thing that I would say about that too, and this also really comes from my own personal experience, those really mind-blowing experiences with spirit where either, let's say, I have a wild visitation dream or I have something blow my mind with a sign that my loved one gives, those are rare, right? They're not all the time. They're not in my everyday experience. What I really find with those particular experiences, those happen when we need it and not when we want it. You know what I mean? That's really how it's been for me. So again, I would also love to just hear your opinions on this, any questions you might have, anything at all around this topic. I'm really happy to help and answer your questions. So by all means, you can message me on really any social media platform. You can comment on this episode. I'm always happy and, definitely want to hear what my listeners are, experiencing with this stuff. So I want you to get really comfortable and in a place where you're not going to be disturbed. If you're driving right now, maybe do this later. And before we really settle in, I want you to just pick a meeting point. So this is a real place, or it really can be a created place, but I really recommend something that is real and a place that you actually used to go to or be with your loved one a lot. So just take a moment to decide on that area and don't overthink it. Just go with whatever comes naturally to you, even if it seems kind of weird. All right, you guys. So I'm just going to have you do a really quick visualization before we wrap up here. Once you feel good about your location and the particular loved one that you're wanting to meet in this location, I want you to close your eyes and get super comfortable. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Doing that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. Allowing all the muscles in your body to soften and release any tension that you're holding. Simply allowing yourself to just be in this present moment. I then want you to bring yourself to this meeting point in your mind. Bring yourself there, and I want you to use all of your senses to ground yourself within this location. Taking in all the details, seeing what you hear, smell, or feel. Really bringing it to life in your mind. And I now want you to invite your loved one into this location to be with you. And bring them in. And really feel their energetic presence and how it shifts that energy. And doing the same thing as you did with your location, using all of your senses to bring them to life in your mind. I don't want you to worry about having any type of outcome out of this experience. We're not going to be talking. I really just want you to feel your loved one's presence, and that is all. Gently begin to bring yourself back to your body and the room that you're sitting in. Saying goodbye to your loved one for now, but knowing that they're really not going anywhere. And feeling a sense of gratitude for just being able to be in their presence. You can gently move your body in any way that feels good to you. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. One thing I want to say about this is if you didn't see anything, I don't want you to worry about it. And it also doesn't mean that you did this wrong. Because, for example, you may not be super visual, and you may have more of a emotional feeling or a physical feeling. So I want you to pay attention to all those other sensations that we can receive this stuff from. And realize that it's okay if it was not quite the way that maybe I was describing it. Okay? And it's also practice and experimentation, right? So see what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, try something different. And I guarantee you, the more that you are willing to be flexible with that and willing to try new things, try different ideas, the better that this is going to unfold. So like I already said, if you have any questions about this topic or any experiences personally that you'd like to share with us and the audience, I would love to hear that. So you can reach out to me on Instagram at Medium Daisy. I'm also Medium Daisy on Facebook and also on my website, which is all linked below. And I also have actually a guided meditation to connect with your loved one that is much more involved than what I just did. And I will link that below as well so that you can check that out and give it a shot. So thank you so much for joining me and listening, and I will be back very soon with another episode. So I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.